gentlemen, Gungans and droids across our beloved empire, we're back and ready for action. We've been gone for the past week and a half or so, and I just got in, and I needed to make this right now because there's a stealth nerf potentially costing you thousands of free-to-play dollars inside of your roster that CG's not telling people. So I'm putting this message out there as early as possible because they're doing basically a stealth nerf to your entire roster. I don't care if you spend millions, trillions, billions, or you're a peasant free-to-play person that doesn't want to spend a single cent. You need to watch this video right now because there are two important takeaways that you need to do right now before this update hits. Now, of course, there's an easy solution to this, and that's just CG, taking actual necessary steps to not screw you guys over, but we can't make assurances. We can't base our plans around that. Long story short, there's a gear update coming, right? We talked about that last week when I was gone during the road ahead. It's good. It's meant to, my perspective, the whole point of this new update is meant to basically get people caught up with what I like to call legacy characters, pre-Kyrotech characters, getting up the gear 12 a bit faster. They don't seem to be wanting to be targeting the post-Kyrotech characters because you still need lots of Kyrotech to get the gear 12. Cool, fine and dandy, but here's one of the big problems that we have that's going to be costing you a major nerf now to your roster, and there's also going to be a slight nerf. It's not a net neutral. Afterwards, gear acceleration items will have their salvage or conversion to relic materials reduced by 50%. Now, after the update, you're not going to really notice it, right? Because you're going to get double the gear, and then in returns, it should be net zero. Mostly, not 100%. They're like 90% in the truth there, but there's still a 10% truth they have yet to reveal. The point of this here, let's just get straight to it. The things you need to do up until this update, unless they do something before this update hits, number one takeaway is this. There's going to be a massive reduction in the amount of relic conversion that you're going to get. So this is before the update, right? So let's just say, for example, I want to give them 1,000 of these right now. I would get 63 pieces of carbonite circuit boards. However, effectively, your current inventory of gear is going to be cut in value by half because they aren't doubling the current gear that you have hoarded up. You seeing what I'm saying? So technically, what you're seeing, if let's say I didn't want to scrap my gear, you're basically what you're instead is you're going to be, after this update, only giving them essentially 500 worth of stun cuff value because they're cutting this in half because they're doubling the gear. And as you see, that's a major reduction in carbonite circuit boards. And you can take this from it. Let's take, for example, a bronze and wire. Let's say you're crazy. You want to give away, let's say, all 16. Let's just keep the math a little bit simple because I know people are going to say, well, that wasn't exactly half. So let's say you give 1,600 Mark V stun guns right now. That's 142 pieces. Post update, if you don't scrap away, essentially your 1,600 pieces of gear that you're giving away here, truly post update is only going to be worth about 800. So again, you're losing half of this. And when you total all this with all the hundreds, thousands of pieces of gear you have, you're losing potentially hundreds, not if thousands of dollars of relic materials. This is a massive nerf to your roster if you don't act before the update. So the point of this here is with this upcoming update, basically the two major ones, carbonite circuit boards, bronze and wire, are going to take a major nerf if you don't act beforehand. Slight nerf as well to chromium transistors, rhodium heat sinks. You're not going to see really any nerf to electrum conductors, Zimbital cards moving up because all these require gear 12 pieces. And if you guys remember, the pieces that aren't going to be doubling are essentially all the gold pieces that are inside your roster, as well as Kyrotech. So these you're safe. So you don't need to worry about anything that's electrum conductor and beyond, or you just look at this list. You don't need to worry about scrapping these gears because they're going to maintain their value. But you definitely want to make sure, we're going to talk about which piece of gear, a little reminder, what you should be scrapping. What I'm going to do personally is pretty much before this update hits, like normally I wouldn't scrap all this, but most likely I'm going to end up scrapping all these guys after this, before this update hits, because otherwise I'm going to lose half the valuation of what these are worth with this current update. So I'm basically going to go through it, except maybe like, for example, stun guns. People might be asking, well, how many stun guns should I give away? I don't need 1,600 stun guns for my immediate gearing plans. Probably what I'm going to end up doing is maybe get it down to around maybe 300 pieces left over. That should be enough to deal with my sub gear 12 character that I have. But otherwise, you definitely want to make sure you're tackling this here. And actually, before we show this list, I just want to say, I definitely think this update's for the better. again, what I said in my road ahead review is that this stuff should have been done when Chirotechs were introduced, at least, or maybe when relics were introduced. So this update is a little bit outdated, a little bit slow. It's meant to address things that should have been addressed a long time ago. Still, it's good because you want people to at least embrace those older legendary characters a little bit faster. However, you know, a lot of people are not too happy with this update. I do understand. I wish they were going to address the Chirotechs because that's kind of a big issue for the newer characters since 2019, whenever those Chirotechs got introduced. So it's kind of interesting, and there's still a couple more things we got to take away here. I always share this graph every single time I do a relic guide, like what you should scrap. I just refer to this. This is basically the best resource that I could find that really identifies what you should be giving away specifically for all the different varieties of tiers. And sometimes, you know, chromium transistors are really important ones, as well as the rhodium heat sinks. Not so much of carbonite circuit boards, as well as bronzium wiring. So if you're going to take the more conservative approach to addressing this so you don't get a massive nerf to your relic conversion, this outlines, if you look for the check marks, those are pretty much good to give away. The ones of X, those are a little bit more valuable, but you might want to be a little bit more liberal with what you're going to convert before the update hits, because again, they said it's going to be hitting sometime in December with the new territory. We don't know exactly, so we have time. That's why I'm putting this message out as early as possible, so you have the appropriate amount of time to react and kind of decide what you do. So you don't need to do it right this second, but you definitely, I'm guessing maybe 2-3 weeks before the territory battle update hits. So if you want to be conservative, look for the only green check marks. What I'm going to like to do on my main account as well as my free-to-play account is I'm going to basically burn as much as possible. Make sure in situations like the rhodium heat sinks, you want to craft the Mark III hollow projector. Don't scrap them individually, because the crafted part is worth more than the individual parts. We also see examples with the chromium transistors. Also, another note, rhodium heat sinks, the Sir Sun shield generator are also another good opportunity to craft and upgrade. But chromium transistors, there's a lot of them. Like for the Mark 7 ball, you want to craft them. For the Mark 7 blast sickle mod, you want to craft them. You want to make sure you craft the right ones and not just sell them individually, because you're trying to get the most bang for buck. So again, refer to this and specifically worry about carbonite circuit boards, bronzium wiring, chromium transistors, and the Mark III hollow projectors. But I might even scrap some other stuff that I normally wouldn't, because I want to make sure I get the most possible and hopefully endure what's coming out with this update here. So that's part number one that's incredibly important. Scrap what you have before this update hits. And of course, the obvious solution to all this, to make sure we're not going to take this net negative, I have a bit of a cynical approach. I'm surprised CG didn't notice this, unless they just didn't realize it. They didn't have the foresight to acknowledge this, or they're trying to catch a fast one on you guys. The easy way to address this situation is just take our current gear stash and double it. So that way, once we get into this this new post relic conversion economy with the new gear, what are you going to call it, 2.0 update, it's gonna be fine. But then the problem is you're gonna be swimming in a lot of gear to gear up characters. So I don't know, they just were hoping, maybe they'll figure it out. We'll just stay quiet on this. This is for you guys to decide what you want to do. But since they're not doubling our current gear inventory, probably best to scrap as much as possible, or else they're gonna get kind of the short end of the stick after this update. Actually, now that I think about it, there's 3 things to point out. Second thing I want to point out is that, speaking of carbonite circuit boards, bronzium wiring, challenges, this is one of those things where CG said they are not gonna be doubling the rewards. They did it last year, so technically this one I could see be taken either way. The negative approach is you're not going to get nearly as much bronzium wire and carbonate circuit board scrapping that you're used to from this material right here, because again, all this, the value of them from the relic conversion, it's going to be cut in half. It would have been nice that they doubled this gear, and that's why I think they're not going to double our current inventory, because they don't even want to double this to kind of coincide with this relic economy reduction. So one thing that is going to happen, and it's not 100% net neutral, is that for the relic conversion, although they wanted to be net neutral, at least so they say, you are going to take a slight hit for scrapping some of these for bronzium wirings, carbonite circuit boards as well. So that's another thing to put in mind. And unfortunately, in that regard, not much we can do to prepare for that. We can't just go in and double the gear, but you could take the right approach for the first problem that we talked about. The third thing that I think is kind of the main takeaway in this video here is this is a good thing. Now's the time, once you're evaluating your roster and you're kind of saying, all right, what are the next sub gear 12 characters I'm working on? How much gear do I reasonably need to kind of keep up with that and scrap the rest? The third thing that I would recommend doing is hoarding your currency, because this is a situation where you are going to benefit. So post update, hypothetically, relics are going to be mostly a net neutral thing, because after this update, you're going to get double the gear, which should equal basically what it is right now. So right now it's a 1-to-1. After it's going to be basically a 2-to-2. That's the best way I can describe it. But you're going to want to hoard as much currency as possible, because in this situation, so let's say, for example, these Mark III's Churka stun cuffs, Carbantes, that's going to be very lucrative, I think, for a lot of people. Here, you're essentially going to get double the amount of gear off of your guild currency, because remember, they're reducing the cost of a lot of the gear inside of these shipments here. And as they say right here, the shipment price of these goods will be reduced by 50%, except for conquest currency. That's not going to be changing. So I'm going to be able to essentially get 10 stun cuffs for the cost of 280s, or 140 for the cost of 5. So at this point, you know, because like normally I've made it a habit, I always go through, pick up stun guns, pick up stun cuffs, pick up the Carbantes. You know, you make it a habit to go through and pick stuff up. Unless you truly need it this very moment, it might be best to wait. Wait and see this update, and then you're gonna get a lot more gear post update here. And the same thing goes for a lot of this other stuff that we're used to seeing. Or I also like to go to the guild event store and pick up a lot of stuff here. Now remember, gear 12 items, not going to change. So if you need some gear 12 stuff, hop on it. But let's say you want to pick up some, you know, stun guns in here, or Carbantes, you might want to wait unless you truly need it this very moment. So to summarize, the 3 main things you guys need to know about and take immediate action in the immediate next 2 weeks type of action here until this update drops. I'm being kind of a bit more, you know, it could be another 3-4 weeks. We don't know. They said December. Could be the last week of December. Could be the first week of December. But you have this intel now. Step number 1, go inside your roster. Scrap away as much as possible for carbonites, bronzium wiring, chromium transistors, as well as the rhodium heat sinks. And don't worry about the gold gear, because that's not going to change and the value will maintain the same. But definitely figure out a game plan for you. Use that spreadsheet I sent to you guys, or be like me and you're going to be very liberal and scrap as much as possible to make sure you're not taking a significant decrease in relic economy changes. That's a lot of relic materials you're leaving on the table. I'm actually kind of excited to see how many carbonite circuit boards I get on my main account, and this by just going all in. Secondly, it does look like we're going to get that nerf, unfortunately, to our bronzium wiring and our carbonite circuit boards, because they're not doubling the gear here, unfortunately. Thirdly, hoard as much gear as possible, unless you need some gear 12 stuff, or you really need the purple gear right now to gear up stuff. So hopefully this is going to give you the foresight you need. I was like, oh, I'm like, please don't update the game. Please don't update the game when I was gone, because I wanted to make sure we get to this. But now you have the intel. This is very important. You got the time to decide how you're going to act to this. But as of now, unless they're doubling the hoarded gear, which I don't think is going to happen, the thing I think a lot of people are saying is scrap now, cash in. So that way you're not losing. Boy, 50% reduction in the value of your current gear when you're trying to do relic conversions. Yikes. That's a lot of nerfs to your roster. But now you got the power to make the change from within. And with that power comes great responsibility. And with such responsibility, I'm not sure how I'm connecting the dots here. You might want to say, it's great to be in the Empire today.